My name's Jim Kane. I've worked with native bees for 40 years. A couple things about bees that make them more attractive than most beetles or stink bugs. For one, they're rounded and furry, so they have a puppy-like attraction to humans that I think is deep-seated. Many of their behaviors are overt and out in the open. You can watch them on flowers. And they're convenient and available. They're in your city park. They're in your yard. They're right there. And they beg questions just by what they're doing. Oh, this one's different from that one. Oh, what's this one? Is this a bee too? And then you're started down the path. The honeybee is not the only bee. Worldwide, for bees, there's 20,000 named species. In North America, about 3,500 species of native bees. Every bee is native somewhere. Bees are native if it was present without the assistance of humans. We've moved a few bees around the world, honeybees in a big way. Native bees are important from two perspectives, I guess. One, we never ask why pikas are important or moose are important, but we conserve them anyway. The other one, which most people talk about, is that they are important pollinators for most of our wildland plants. Not the grasses, not the conifers, but so much else. And they're important pollinators for many of our crops. Spices especially, fruit crops. Humans wouldn't starve without bees, but we'd have a much less interesting diet and we'd have trouble getting some vitamins. Bees are organized into three groups. So the one group are like the honeybee. They have perennial colonies. They have a queen. She's strictly an egg layer. There's a sharp division of labor in the colony. There's the egg layers, and then there's all the workers who do everything else. Then there's what are called primitively social species. So that's bumblebees. There's also a bunch of primitively social bees who are ground nesters, very unassuming little nests, but they have the same arrangement and the same life cycle and the same business as the bumblebee, but most people never notice them. There's also some kleptoparasites. They invade an active nest of a host bumblebee and displace that queen, usually rather aggressively. Again, another Shakespearean drama like Hamlet. And then the workers are their slaves. So yeah, pretty dramatic. All the rest of the bees are what we call solitary bees. They may nest in groups, but each female does her own reproduction. She's mated, she lays her own eggs, she builds her own nest, she does her own provisioning, and she never meets her offspring. There's no overlap of generations, there's no division of labor. The purpose of a lot of flower morphology is to precisely position the visitor such that there's reliable pickup and transfer of pollen. So pollen essentially contains the male gamete. It's the male part of reproduction for flowers. Because plants are stationary, they can't move to find other mates. So it finds its mates through pollinators. I'm going to use this daylily flower to show you the elements of pollination. It's really quite simple, but I can show you because the flower parts are big here in a daylily flower. So pollination is how plants reproduce sexually. The basics of it is that compatible pollen moves from the anthers and is picked up by a pollinator, usually inadvertently, sometimes intentionally, and some of it ends up on the stigmatic tip here. And so all it is, you simply get a pollen deposit right there. You can do this yourself in your own garden if you want. Then that pollen will germinate on that stigma and grow it tubes all the way down this long, long style. Probably takes several days to reach the ovules at the bottom. And the male gametophyte of those, the equivalent of our sperm essentially, will fertilize the ovules, essentially the equivalent of our eggs, down inside of here, which in that fertilization will start an embryonic seed. The fruit forms below, could be a capsule, could be pods, could be an apple, could be a squash. Those seeds that you get inside result from a pollination event. Every pumpkin you have ever carved and dug out the seed, every single one of those seeds arose from one pollen grain, sending a pollen tube down the style of the flower and fertilizing one ovule. The relationship of native bees and native seeds is that most everything that's not wind pollinated will cease to reproduce without native pollinators. Most of the showy flowers you see, even some of the flowers that aren't showy, would be gone. We're going up Mill Hollow, which is one of the many side canyons off of Logan Canyon. It's got a small trail. At least 30 years ago or longer was the last livestock, and so the forb community is in better condition than other places. Yeah. Gorgeous flower. You have these in the Sierra Nevada, down in the western desert. Some of them are yellow. It's a state flower of Utah. And this is the Logan River. And it's running high right now because of the blast of melt from the high country. One of the more important things we can do is where we have good habitat is not to compromise it, to set it aside, to protect it, to manage it properly. We're getting to the point for native bees where a few more changes in land management practices and all of a sudden large parts of their biota start to go into sharp decline. As we've expanded cropland, as we've used insecticides and things like that, there's been a gradual loss of habitat. And so it may be a forerunner of where we could be headed if we're not careful, if we're not paying attention. Nature is restorative to one's soul and spirit. I don't think I'd want to live on a planet where everything was cultivated and all land was transformed for human use. It's just not a planet worth living on.